Welcome, everyone. I am Mr. Raleigh, and today's lesson is over understanding theme. Let's dive right in. We start with the definition. What is theme? Theme is a universal idea, lesson, or message explored throughout a work of literature, although it could be any medium you're using, television, movies, comic books, anything really. If there's a story involved, there is a theme in there somewhere. All works of literature have themes. The same work can have multiple themes, and many different works explore the same or similar themes. Many times, things like short stories, fables, things like that might focus on just one theme. Um, Listen to Your Parents from Little Red Riding Hood or something like that. Longer works, though, almost always have multiple themes that they're going to explore. And you can even have situations where you have um, a collection or a trilogy of books or many books. Take the Harry Potter series, for instance, that have themes that start in one book and are explored throughout multiple, four, five, six, even seven novels. So theme can work in many different ways there. Next up, a theme is not a word, it is a sentence. Um, so if you take a concept such as courage or love, for instance, this is not specifically a theme. That is a topic. To get to theme, the author has to have an opinion or something to say about that specific topic, right? It can't just be an idea such as love, courage, death. There has to be something else attached to it to make it a theme. Now, you don't necessarily have to agree with the theme to identify it. So, if the author is arguing, for instance, that unbridled love can be a destructive force, right? You don't have to agree with that. You could think that love is only a force for good, but it doesn't, but the theme still remains the same, right? And finally, most themes are implied. I put most there simply because there are a very few stories aimed at children where they will literally say in the story what the theme is. If you think back to such as Aesop's fables, something like the tortoise and the hare, at the end of that story, I believe it says the race is not always to the swift, right? Um, or slow and steady wins the race, right? In the updated versions. But it will literally tell you what the theme of that story is at the end. The majority of the time, that is not going to happen. Themes are implied, which means that you have to do a little inferring or a little bit of investigative work to find out what the theme in that particular story is. Okay, some examples of theme then. One I already mentioned, love can be a destructive force found in, for instance, Romeo and Juliet. War can take a psychological toll on soldiers. Many stories, Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five comes to mind, where war is so um, horrible that a soldier's mind, an entire body, in fact, come unstuck in time. Slow and Steady wins the race. From Tortoise and the Hare. Always Listen to Your Parents, a great one from Little Red Riding Hood. Of course, in that story, if you don't listen to your parents, your grandmother is murdered and a wolf attempts to eat you. So high stakes in the Grimm's fairy tales themes that they have. Okay, moving on to universal themes. Universal themes. A universal theme is an idea that applies to anyone, regardless of cultural differences or geographic location. Universal themes are ways to connect ideas across all disciplines. It is a central idea about the human condition. It is a generalization about life or human nature. They deal with basic human concerns. So, a universal theme is simply something that is going to be the same here, right, in rural Missouri, as it would be anywhere else in the world, right? So, um, any sort of concept that you could imagine is going to be shared by the rest of the world is a universal theme. most themes that you are going to run into are universal themes. Unless a theme is tied to something specific in culture, for instance, you might read a book specifically, maybe some sort of fiction book, specifically focused around the events of September 11th and how the events brought people together, something like that, right? Um, that would be a specific theme tied to America, probably specifically New York City in America, about a particular event. But anything that deals with love, courage, death, any of these broad, big concepts, those are going to be universal themes. I think I have some examples here of some, yes. Um, so, for instance, the evil of unchecked ambition. So the Moby Dick story, right? When someone becomes so obsessed with something they can't think about anything else, and it costs them their relationships with their family, shipmates, right? So, or whoever. Ambition is not something only found in America at that time. Ambition is found throughout the world, and it can have consequences if it goes too far around the world. Next up, the impact of the past on the present. For instance, the story of Sound of Thunder, where a minor change in the past has drastic consequences for the present. Right? Every culture, every belief system around the world has a past, and those places believe that their past, in some ways, impacts the present and will impact the future. So that is a universal theme. The eternal struggle between good and evil, right? Let's see, Star Wars, right? Are you a Sith or are you a Jedi Knight, right? That struggle between good and evil. Now, it might not be in those specific terms, right? Jedis and Siths. There's lots of different ways that it could be shown, but the idea of good and evil exists everywhere in the world, right? And there are stories based around that. So those are universal themes that are found. Next up, how is theme developed? So now we know what theme is, right? So we have a definition of it. We know where it's found, right, in stories, but how do you specifically locate it? And then how do authors take a theme and then show you, or I should say, take a topic and then show you what their thoughts are on that topic by developing a theme? Well, there's kind of three major ways this is done. The first way is through plot. And we'll start with probably the most obvious and easy to see one, the key events, specifically what is happening in the story. So let's say you have a story that's talking about the horrors of war, right? And the mental anguish that goes along with that, PTSD, etc. Well, if that's the case, then somewhere in your story, probably you are going to have scenes of war, whether it be the war actually happening in the novel or flashbacks to the war. Maybe this is after the war, but there are flashbacks that go back to that war. But it just makes sense if your theme is based around the horrors of war, then there are going to be events talking about that within the story. That's kind of the obvious one, right? That one is always easy to find. Next up, we have setting. So how a setting or how a location is portrayed can have a dramatic impact on how a theme is developed. I'll give you an example. We'll stick with war here. Let's say in your story, they have a description of a battlefield. If the author's description of that battlefield is that it is violent, it's bloody, it's frightening, there's death surrounding that character, then we can safely assume the theme there is that war is bad, or war is frightening, or war is horrifying because of how that battlefield was described. Now, if you take that same battlefield and it's described as brothers in arms protecting each other, people who are injured, shot, are then taken away and saved by the main character. And in the end, the battle is victorious, and they all celebrate afterwards, something along those lines. Then obviously the theme is not that war is some horrible evil thing. In that concept and that imagining that the battlefield is a place to win honor. The battlefield is the good overcoming evil, right? The good guys winning in the end. That sort of theme. And then finally, we have symbols. Um, so you can have something within your story that is representative of a theme. I'll take, let's take Lord of the Rings, the One Ring in Lord of the Rings. This is a symbol of absolute power in the story. Whoever holds the ring holds all the power, absolute power. Well, one of the main themes running through the story is that power corrupts. You hear that old adage, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. Well, that's a major theme throughout the story. And in the story, whoever has the ring, while they do have immense power, they also begin to have dark thoughts. They begin to themselves corrupt, right? And that's a major theme shown through the symbol, the One Ring. All right, let's move on to character then. Character. Character qualities, character actions, and how characters respond to situations may all relate to theme. So character interaction here is really important and can have a big influence on theme. Let's go with Romeo and Juliet, classic story here. How they interact with each other, specifically how they love each other, if you will, is a major influence on one of the themes of Romeo and Juliet, which is that love can be a destructive force. So they take their love to an extreme, right? We would say they're obsessed with each other, so much so that it has consequences for their family members and even for themselves. If the story was written differently, if in Romeo and Juliet they had gotten together and said, you know what, let's try to work all this out with our families. Let's take some time, see how our relationship develops, give it 2 or 3 years. Then the entire theme of the story would change because the story is not about rational love. It's about the opposite, irrational love, passionate love that goes too far. So character interactions and how characters act throughout a story also impact theme and help develop theme. Finally, then we have dialogue and internal character thoughts. So the things the characters say or the things the characters think within their own mind. A great example of this would be Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, who throughout the story repeatedly says, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. Right? Those are words that are actually repeated specifically at the end that send her home. Right? But those are words that are used throughout the story to emphasize one of the themes, and that is the feeling of home. Right? And how great it is to have a home, people that love you, that are around you. You're never alone. That's that sort of idea. And so dialogue can be used to develop theme as well. All right, creating the theme. So at some point in your writing career, you will be asked to write narrative stories, and you will need a theme for those stories. So I thought it would be a good idea to just, in a very basic sense, go over how you create a theme. Now, there are many ways that you could do this, and sometimes this happens organically or just naturally, a theme just comes to you. But if you're stuck, if you need help on this, there is a fairly simplistic kind of solution to this if you need help creating one. So the first thing that you will want to do is take a topic. Again, if you want to take a universal topic, such as some of the ones listed here, courage, independence, respect, that's even better because essentially any story could incorporate these regardless of what your setting time period is. Then you're going to take that topic and you are going to have an assertion about that topic, or you're going to have an opinion about that topic. So for instance, for courage, you could say, courage allows people to attempt difficult tasks in their lives. So by having courage, you're willing to attempt things that normal people wouldn't, or normally maybe even the main character wouldn't, but he has courage, now he will, and he can do difficult things and overcome obstacles. Independence, right? An assertion of independence is necessary to grow up. right? So these are coming of age stories, right? So moving away, far away from your parents, growing up, and gaining some independence. And finally, respect is something that must be earned, right? Stories that focus on people that are new to a job, or a rookie on a basketball team or something like that, that has to earn the respect of the veterans there, before they will befriend him or consider him part of the team or group. All right, but this is a very simplistic way of creating a theme for a narrative that you might want to write in the future. Finally, then, some additional resources if you need them. Both YouTube videos, fairly short, 5-ish minutes in length. The first one is on developing theme. Second one then on understanding theme. Right. Both, as I mentioned, YouTube videos about 5-ish minutes long. That's it for today's lesson. Hope you have a great day.